Hi pals, I hope you're all doing well. Today I just wanted to do a quick sort of currently reading check-in and also a little bit of a trash my currently reading pile video. So I would like your input about the books I'm reading and whether or not you think they are worth continuing with. Some of the books I'm reading I feel like I will continue with, and I feel like yes, I'm okay with continuing with this book. I like it for XYZ reason. But I am reading a lot of books at the moment, and some of them I feel like I could just DNF it and not a lot would be lost in my life. One of the reasons I want to do this currently reading check-in / trash my currently reading pile is that this weekend it starts the Queer Lit Readathon, and I want to take part in that, and I'm intending to vlog it, so that's something to kind of expect coming up soon. But I feel like I've got too many books on the go, and I really do need to kind of cut that pile down a bit to give me more space to read some of the books that are on my Queer Lit Readathon TBR / radar. So to start, I'll run through the books that I'm pretty sure I will continue reading. I've got about 14 books in total here to talk to you about, so I won't kind of hang about. So the first book that I am reading at the moment, I am reading it today in fact, I've been reading it, like listening to the audiobook. That is Symona Still Single by Lisa Bent, and this is one of the Jacaranda 20 in 2020 books. And it's a romance novel. It's kind of billed as a romance novel, but it's more of like an exploration of self and like a character study. And there's a lot of stuff about therapy and emotions, and this woman wants to have a child and she's trying to seek a life partner, but she can't really find that in the dating scene that she's in and the life that the kinds of people she's meeting, I guess. So I am really liking that one, and I'm definitely going to continue it. I'm about 70% of the way into it, and I'm probably going to finish up today. I'm also reading Crosshairs by Hernandez, and I think this will be a good one to carry into Queer Lit Readathon. It kind of is a dystopian novel, and it's set in a Canada where resources became limited and people started to have to sort of ration, I guess. And the outfall of that was that people started to decide who was worthy of resources, I guess. And through that came a sort of fascist movement against LGBT people and Black, Asian and other minority ethnic people. And they started to be put into work camps, and lots of violence was enacted upon them, and people called the Boots were in charge of sort of policing these people, and lots of violence takes place against these people. So it's a very kind of violent book, and it's a really difficult read, but also there's like real moments of tenderness, and there's like a kind of found family among the people who are like the victims of this fascist regime. So that's quite interesting to read, but I'm just overall looking forward to continuing. I'm over the 50% mark, and yeah, we'll be continuing with that one. Crosshairs was actually gifted to me by the publisher, and so was this next one, and that is A Working Class State of Mind by Colin Burnett. And it's really interesting. It's written in Scots and it's short stories, and it's all kind of working class stories, and so those are things I really like. I've read the first one and I'm keen to continue, so I will be continuing that one. I also last month started I Am China, and I have not really dedicated that much time to this, but when I started it and I read, I think 60 pages, I did have this feeling like this could be a 5-star read, and I don't know why I didn't continue it. I think it was maybe a little bit one that I really wanted to spend time with and kind of know that I was dedicating some good quality time to, because it does feel like one to be kind of cherished and not rushed, if that makes sense. So I'm looking forward to continuing this. I've got a definite kind of feeling that this could be a 5-star read, but yeah, I don't know why I haven't, but it's one that I will continue, even though it's in a big pile of books, as you can tell. I'm also reading a short story collection called Afterparties, and really enjoying it. Again, it's quite heavy, like some of the topics. I think the first story was about male-generated violence and being an immigrant and having less power, and then experiencing this male-generated violence and how men sometimes feel like they can enact violence against more vulnerable people, and very interesting topics, but very difficult topics to read about, but beautifully written. Another one that I think I could give 5 stars to, but again one that I want to kind of savour and really spend time with, so continuing with it but slowly. Alongside Symona Still Single, I'm listening to another audiobook called The Circle of Five by Harris Joshua, and this is non-fiction, and I've been listening to it probably since the start of the year, but very slowly. It follows 5 women and they all get together and share their stories of being part of the Windrush generation and their experiences coming over to the UK. Again, a lot of heavy topics explored, but it's real world, and it's really beautifully told because there's all these different narrators. I think it's the narrator, I don't think it's the people themselves narrating their story, but all these different voices. The sort of main narrator, or like, how would you say, the narrator of the narrators, I guess you might say, they kind of tell a story and tell a narrative and lead you through the different elements of these people's journey to the UK. And then you get these inputs from all of the 5 women. It's very, very moving. It's quite interesting as well to bring that time period to life through these real world stories. I really like doing that when I read about history. I like to read real people's experiences. And so, yeah, very recent history, but still something that I'm very keen to learn more about, and I think this is a really good place to kind of start for me. So yeah, definitely one I'll be continuing with. And at the weekend, just sort of Sunday night, I started Rough Music by Patrick Gale. I'm definitely a mood reader, so I kind of reach for things in a moment of like, oh, I really, really want to read that, and then sometimes they just kind of end up sitting on my bedside for a couple of weeks. But I'm hoping to not do that with this one and just continue reading it. It's a very beautifully told story so far, about a young, it's the same kind of format to Patrick Gale's Take Nothing With You, in that there's an older gentleman who's sort of at a period in his life where he's ready to reflect on his life, and then we sort of have those reflections at the same time as meeting his younger self and experiencing a lot of the things firsthand. This is interesting as well because the young man lives in the governor's house at prison, and that is a very sort of interesting decision on behalf of Patrick Gale to kind of set a story there, and I'm interested to see how he'll depict that lifestyle. If you don't know, I previously worked in prisons in the UK, so this is an interesting kind of setting for me personally. But also I just think Patrick Gale has such a beautiful way of exploring psychology and exploring the psychology of his characters, and yeah, I definitely will continue with this one. And the last one that I will be definitely continuing with is We Have Always Been Here by Samra Habib. And I started this one evening and read the first few chapters, was kind of really taken by it, but again felt like I wanted to cherish it and sort of spend time with it. It's just a short book. It's actually got deckled edges, which is not something I'm typically fond of, but I'm just really keen to read this story. Well, it's a memoir, but read the author's story. And yeah, it's a beautiful cover, very, very pretty cover, and inside so far is very captivating. So we'll definitely be continuing with this probably into Queer Lit Readathon week. So yeah. Now for books I'm less sure about, and I would love your input and kind of help to trash this TBR or trash this current reading list. Tell me if I should continue with these. Are they worthwhile continuing with? Really, please help me. A couple of them are very hyped books and very widely read books, so that's kind of why I thought it would be good to do a video about it and kind of get some input, because I'm hoping some people will have actually read these and can kind of give me input about what I'm struggling with, and is that something that's going to continue. So yeah, please do comment, let me know your thoughts, don't hold back, don't be shy. I would love to hear some input for what I'm reading. So the first book is actually one that has been widely recommended to me across Bookstagram and BookTube, and when I asked specifically for sci-fi recommendations, a lot of people recommended this book to me, so I was very keen to pick it up, and was taken aback initially because it's very character driven, but then returned to it in moods where I was wanting to read a character driven story, because that does happen. Sometimes you want a more plot driven story, sometimes you want a more character driven story, depending on what you're feeling like at that time. So I've returned to it whenever I wanted a character driven story, but I just find myself kind of plodding through it. I'm 100 pages in, 120 pages in, and I should say before a woman go off on a rant that the book is The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet by Becky Chambers. I'm 120 pages in, and I just feel like I've not really hit anything in the book that's compelling me to read on. We've almost spent that full 100 pages kind of being introduced to lots of different characters, and in that way it feels character driven. The story feels character driven, but when I seek character driven stories, I really want to like get in that person's mind and like really deeply understand them, and you're not really getting that, at least so far with this. So I'd like to know if either the book becomes more intimately wound in that person's sort of psyche and their experiences, and really kind of understanding those people and those characters. I really want to know if that happens, or if there's more plot to the book, because just now there's no plot really. They dip in and out of these time holes, or like space, what are they called? Wormholes. They dip in and out of these wormholes, and that's kind of all the action that there is, and I kind of seek sci-fi for action, I guess. I maybe seek it for a more plot-driven narrative. So if there is no action and we're not getting right inside that character's kind of thoughts, feelings, experiences, then there's not a lot to hold me in the book. So does it get more action? Do we get more kind of intimately knowing our characters? Help me, because I want to continue. I want to really like this book, but I am struggling, so I would really appreciate your input. I also recently did a try a chapter tag for all my June new releases, and I said at the end of that video that there was 2 books that I was keen to continue. One was The Other Black Girl, and the second one was a faux love story. And I did continue with a faux love story immediately, and I've been reading it kind of at night time before going to sleep, because I kind of like to read something on my Kindle that's quite light before drifting off to sleep, so it doesn't kind of take too much brain power or kind of become too heavy right before you go to sleep. But a faux love story, it's not really gripping me. I'm about 15% of the way in, and I kind of feel like 15 to 30% of the way through a book you kind of have a feeling about whether or not you're going to enjoy it. But this one just isn't really gripping me, and it kind of feels a difficult one to kind of say, has anyone read this? Because I don't think it's out till near the end of June. But yeah, I suppose what would you do? Would you just continue anyway? I mean, it's a NetGalley arc, I guess, so there's some feelings of obligation. But yeah, it's lighthearted, it's fun, it's sweet, but ultimately it's just not really grabbing me. Like, the characters, at the moment at least, feel indistinguishable from each other. So there's 2 characters, but if you weren't aware of their names at the top and a few small details, you probably wouldn't be able to tell them apart, because they're not kind of built up yet and built out. Yet we're already at the point where there's romance kind of building. So it's just not really doing it for me at the moment. But if you happen to be on NetGalley and have read this, I would love to hear what you thought of it, and if it kind of gets better and is worth continuing, I'd love to hear your thoughts. And I'm kind of catching up with a few of my NetGalley reads, and one of them is Period Queen by Lucy Peach. And this is a book about periods, basically, and like knowing your cycle and kind of understanding all of that. And I am finding it really interesting. I want to kind of understand more about that. And the first sort of 30% of the book was quite kind of fast paced. We found out quite a lot about hormones and quite a lot about menstrual cycles in general in a sort of scientific way. And then Lucy Peach also explains how your cycle works, and like gives each sort of, she kind of sectioned it off into different sections and explains to you like how to kind of manage your life around your cycle, which was a really interesting sort of concept, not something I had really heard of before, and really kind of helped me, I guess, to kind of realise and recognise when changes that are happening in my day-to-day life might actually be connected to my menstrual cycle. So that was really, really interesting, and I think the first 30 to 40% kind of built that up well enough. And then the rest of the book so far at least seems to just be like a really deep dive into those different sections of the cycle, but they don't actually really build out much more. There's not much science introduced or like really any substance. It's just kind of like, woo, girl power, you can own your cycle, like just repeated like inspirational phrases, and it's kind of a little bit, it's not really what I really like from non-fiction, or what I would really be looking for from a title like this. Also, the very female-centric language does kind of grate on me, and it doesn't kind of, it's not very trans-inclusive as a book. Like, the language is very trans-exclusionary, which I just feel like, it's 2021, do you know what I mean? Like, you should know better than that, especially this person who, like, that's their expert field, to write a whole book where it's like girl power. It's like, oh, come on, you can do better than that. I believe you can do better than that by 2021. So that's a wee bit frustrating. But I don't know, what would you do? Would you continue anyway, or would you just bail and move on with your life. I don't know, I'm usually quite a harsh DNFer, but I am struggling a wee bit with these 4 titles. And the final book that I have that I'm questioning is The Memory Keeper's Daughter by Kim Edwards. I started this probably near the start of the year as well, and sort of pick it up and put it down sporadically. I am 141 pages in, so I'm quite a way into it. I don't know if you can really see that. And it's a story about a doctor and his wife has twins. And one of the twins is born with Down syndrome. The wife is kind of conked out from the meds of giving birth, the medication she's taken, and the husband decides to hide the baby from her. He tells her that the baby has died, but the baby hasn't died, and he's given this baby to a nurse. And the nurse is sent to take this baby to an institution, but the nurse decides, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm actually going to care for this baby myself, and she runs away with the baby to care for the baby. So we're getting the mother of the child's point of view and the nurse who is taking care of this child's point of view. So we've got the 2 women's points of view. And I just found it really, really sad to read, like really sad. And every time I would read it, I just felt so down, and I just thought, oh my goodness, this book's having such an effect on me. Like, and sometimes that is a good thing. Books should elicit strong emotions in you, but when a book's just making you feel down, I just thought, oh, I can't continue with this. So I put it down temporarily with the thought that I would pick it back up again, but I never have, and it's probably been about 3 months since I last put it down, so now I'm just wondering whether or not I should continue it. If you've read this, does it kind of have a hopeful ending? Will it leave me with a feeling of hope, or will I just feel overwhelming despair and upset? I'd love to know. If you read it, what you thought of it, I would really, really appreciate your input. So yeah, there's probably, let me see where they are. So there's really 4 books that I'm kind of querying. I've got a lot of books on the go, but there's 4 that I'm really querying. There's A Long Way to a Small Angry Planet. There's The Memory Keeper's Daughter. There's also Period Queen and A Faux Love Story. And I'm just not really sure whether or not I should DNF. So leave me a comment, let me know your thoughts. So what are you currently reading? Are you reading anything good? Anything that you think I might like, or you think I should pick up, or just something you're enjoying? I'd love to hear from you and chat to you in the comments down below. So thank you so much for watching, and I will see you again in my next video.